And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we've got another one in terms of interview. Today we have John Schindler here, and we are going to discuss an array of topics in terms of filmmaking. And before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and please share these videos with your friends, colleagues, even adversaries. The more attention we get, the more it can help us grow our audience. John, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And right off the bat, I'm going to give you a treat. Please, please, please call me JT. I invite you. That's what my friends call me. So
Okay.
if we're going to have a conversation, I want to be close to you. So call me
Okay.
JT.
Excellent. Well, JT, I want to keep this conversation as natural and organic as possible. So let's just start off from the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, of course. I'm a filmmaker living in New York, and then I'm a primary caretaker of two children. So it's balancing the life of being a husband and a father with being an artist. And I think a lot of people can relate to that there isn't a balance. You're always kind of tipping the scale awkwardly in one direction.
Right, right, and I was going to say too, because most of the people that I've spoken with so far, I mean, they're either devoting either 100% or at least 50% of their energies to their craft as a filmmaker. But in your case, because you're a father, sometimes it kind of feels like a 60-40 or 80-20 ratio, doesn't it?
100%. And that doesn't happen right away. And I think I was definitely one of the people out there who was gung ho 100%. I was paying taxes in LA and New York. That I
Hmm.
was really in it. I was working hard, but I was below the line. That was the thing, is I was like, my work and my framing and my mindset was about making rent, making the camera payment, whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
I was working these hourlies and I was making weekly pays, and I was single or dating or whatever. And when I became married and I met my partner, Viana, lovely, lovely person. She's actually out in LA now. She's the executive pastry chef for Carbone.
Oh,
She's doing
okay.
incredible. So she's out in LA right now cooking for like celebrities and stuff. She's doing great. And she'll be back like next week. So we had developed a great partnership that let us both be creative and explore our crafts individually of each other, and then try to build the family unit at home.
Right.
So that works when you both can kind of balance on each other, and that doesn't happen right away. And I think what I was going to get to is, when I got married, this guy turned to me, and he'd been married for a while. He had kids, and he said, look, the money will come. And it was like a weird, like, esoteric statement. He was like, if you're a filmmaker and you're good to your family and you're good to your children, the universe will recognize that and it'll help you out. It'll get money to you. And I was like, that's like kind of like witchcraft talk. He's like, we'll believe in it. So I took a step back from working hourlies. I did. I just like took time off,
Hmm.
and I built myself up above the line, doing like no low pays, directing, producing stuff for very little money. I made it happen sort of like underneath the table. And so then when I reemerged, I had enough credibility and validity to be above the line, work remote from home. And it really pushed me to develop a lot of different skills. And this is something I think I talk about with a lot of people, is that I realized everyone who told me they were a filmmaker knew how to make a movie. Like everybody at this point kind of has access to cameras, computers, and they know people who know people. They can find somebody to help them make the movie. But what I was having trouble with is nobody knew how to raise money and nobody knew how to sell their film. So that's been the thing that's changed for me as a filmmaker, is when I went remote, when I went like into my house, I started taking less day jobs. I started taking way less like TV shows, and I started only producing and directing things that I could have control of, obviously, because I needed to look out for my family. And it just positioned me in a different way where I could now establish myself as somebody who's like, oh, your film's going to cost how much? 40,000. I think I can find that. And that shocked people. And I realized that's the skill I had developed. That's like the magic craft I had learned. But it took me becoming like sort of a hobbit, being in this like little hermit hole, working
Right.
behind my keyboard all the time, doing all this research. And it's like when you're in the field all the time, you don't have time to do that research. It's the same thing all your creatives will tell you. It's like, I have no time to write. And it's like, well, what are you doing? They're like, I'm working all the time. I'm like, well, that's why you're not writing, because you're working all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I had Brady Jekwin on a few weeks ago, and we did go into detail about how to get a film project financed. And I'm not sure if I told you this, but I did go to school for filmmaking
Sure.
at UNC Greensboro. During my 4 years there, they taught us everything from camera work, editing, how to work in post production, writing, treatments and everything. But at no point did they ever say, and this is how you write a proposal for getting financing. So when I had the interview with him,
I'm laughing. I apologize because everyone has told me this.
yeah,
Everyone.
and it's true, and it's true because it's true because yeah, I mean it's important to learn to learn the technical and artistic side, but
let's not degrade what that importance is so valuable to know
right.
how to make a movie. Okay.
But the thing is that they never touch on the business side. So I was wondering, like, very briefly, can you touch on like what were the pitfalls, what were the lessons that you had to learn in terms of steering the business aspect of the filmmaking process?
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the most important things we can talk about today, frankly.
Yeah.
And then because I went to college, I took film courses. That's not what I went to college for. I ended up taking film courses later on,
Yeah.
But they never brought it up. And I talked to graduate students. It was never brought up. When I moved to New York and talked to filmmakers, I met really talented directors, DPs, producers, actors, like sound, production design, and name a department. None of them knew how to get money.
No.
You know what I mean? So it was like, so how are you guys? And so a lot of people, they're getting stuff self-funded, right? And this is something right off the bat, I'm going to say, don't do this. Now, before I give too much advice, the disclaimer is this is not legal advice. You should not accept this as like proper advice. But I'm just going to give my opinion.
Yeah.
You shouldn't use your own money until it's like an emergency. So this forces you into a situation where you must raise money. The project must raise money. You're not throwing money at a weak fish, because this is an issue a lot of filmmakers would do, is the passion will get ahead of them and they won't be honest with themselves. But you shouldn't be throwing, and I've run into this where someone was like, hey, we want you to produce this film. I'm like, I'm totally down. It's a great script, great project. They're like, we have 80 grand. I'm like, that's pretty good for a feature. I can work with that. Do you need me to raise it? Right.
So let me ask you this. So when they tell you it's 80 grand or they give you any figure of money, like how are they coming up with that number? Exactly.
That was an oddity to me because they worked backwards. Their director had 80 grand. And so that's my thing. I was like, don't work like this. And I even said that to them, and they didn't hire me. They were like, basically, it was like the dinner meeting if I was going to be the producer. And I was like, I would prefer he doesn't spend all of his 80,000. And I wasn't hired. That project, though, they hired me back on later because of an emergency situation. And I saved their butt. But I warned them flat out. I was like, I wouldn't approach it this way. Okay.
Right.
So the way you should always do it is you take your script and you should hand it to a producer who can be a line producer, or an AD who can be a line producer, assistant director, and be like, hey, it's this many pages. It looks like it's this many actors. I'm estimating this many crew members, this many days. You're guessing, and you come up with maybe $10,000 a day for how many days? Or I think I can schedule this one for $6,500 a day for how many days? Or whatever it's going to be, okay? And that number becomes your shooting principal. That's like what you have to get to do your shooting, your principal photography.
Right.
However, it's not going to cover your post-production, your pre-production, your distribution, and all your hidden fees. So this is when you get a good line producer, a good, accountant. And just as a director producer, you really need to know all this stuff as well. But
Hmm.
you need to pad your budget in a way that makes sense. So one way is often if your principal is going to be 50,000, just put on paper that your post production is going to be 50,000. Even if you have no bids, no estimates, whatever. It's
Right.
probably accurate. It probably is accurate. You're not lying here. And this is all about having the data or the metrics so that when you go to talk to a potential donor, a potential like in-kind donation, or even the magic like investor, they're going to want to see on paper what you're talking about. Because it's not enough to just say, I need 80,000, I need 100,000. If you say, hey, we can raise 40,000 with crowdfunding, we need 40,000 for post-production. This is how much we're going to pay for each subject of post-production. So it's just about building trust with the people who have money based on being able to speak their language. So one of the things we do is I build budgets literally for projects that I'm not working on just to stay in practice
Right.
constantly, just to be able to do math, think about what the tax would be. Like I'm helping out a student film right now just because they said, hey, our last producer kind of boned us. Obviously, I'm not mentioning names or anything on this, but like they said, our last producer kind of boned us. We know you're a cool guy. Can you help us out?
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah. Like, send me everything. And I just ran their stuff through a budget and was like, this is where your holes are. Be careful. But like, this is a key step. Key step is just knowing how much everything's going to cost. And you cannot ask for money if you're not frankly sure how many days you're going to shoot, how much food's going to cost for those days, and how people are going to get to and from set. Like you're just not ready. You shouldn't be spending money. And it kind of like it blows my mind sometimes when I hear about student films that or short films that go like 27 hours long and there's like not a bathroom on set and nobody thought about food or water. And you're like, that's dangerous. So I stress a basic system, like 4-day shoot weeks if possible. I really try to do 4-day shoot weeks. I really try to do 10-hour days, but it's honest 12, because you got load in, load out, and lunch. We
Yeah.
try to do 21 setups. We really try to limit how much we shoot. There's just a lot of concentration put on efficiency of filming and capturing of the data and whatever that's going to be. And most of our time and energy is put in pre-production, even before we have the money, figuring out how to be as efficient as possible. Because then when you make your pitch deck, you have a really tight budget. And when I go into rooms, honestly, I love to touch on this right now. I think it's funny that we still say like getting into the room because had I've had that experience a few times, but it's not really the experience anymore. The room now is more like this. It's like a Zoom call, a phone call, a text, a beer. People want to meet in person a lot. Like, so like the idea of the room is kind of like superfluous. I will say, if you're going to enter a big room, have a lawyer. I have a lawyer on retainer. I have extra lawyers I can call because the person whose room you're going to walk into to have this conversation about money, they have 3 lawyers in the room and they're not going to tell you they're lawyers. They're going to tell you that they're this person's friend or like acquaintance. It's a real thing. So, and my buddy, he just got back he was pitching his short film to be a TV show to like, Netflix, Hulu, everybody. He was doing the whole gambit. And he said he was flanked by 2 lawyers. His manager was there, and Netflix had like 6 lawyers. He
Oh
didn't
yeah.
talk. He didn't talk once. You know what I mean? So when it comes to money, it's all about being able to talk the talk. So when you're at the independent level or the lower level, it comes down to these budgets first, right? So you have a min budget, max budget, and you know who you're talking to. You show your donors probably your max budget. You show investors your max budget. And mid budget is anyone who's in the project and needs to know exactly how much money you need to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk to people, you should have like, this is what's amazing to me, is before I even say the word investment, there's probably 6 months of work. It's insane to me that people will be like, hey, I have an idea for a project. Do you want to invest in it? And I'm like, you understand you broke laws, like federal law right there?
Really?
Yes, it's a criminal action. It's fraud. So you can't do that. It's so
Oh, wow.
you have to have so many things in place before you say the word investment. You
So-
can say, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. So actually, do want to I actually do want to go back on that. So why is that a bit of a legal quagmire right there?
Hammurabi Code. This goes back to ancient times. The
Okay.
Hammurabi Code says, I'm going to give you $1,000 to go sell this silver. When you get back, I get $1,000 or else. That's
I see.
Hammurabi Code, and it's been in place forever. You cannot. This is UN has sanctions on this. The U.S. has multiple federal laws and international laws you can look up that relate to this specific thought. So the basic way to protect yourself is you get a lawyer first off, and this lawyer helps you with all the proper documents, like a private placement memorandum, often called a term sheet. There's multiple ways to fill this out, but this follows along with your budget and everything. And it explains to people what their investment's actually worth, how diluted their shares are, what their actual return is possibly. But it has to be this idea that you can't promise people money. My son's coming in. But you can't promise people money. You cannot promise return on investment. That is not okay because it is never guaranteed. There's always you have to explain risk. Risk must be at the forefront of your explanation. That's in the term sheet, that's in the private placement memorandum. You have to explain to these people, if you give me $1, you might not get it back. But if we make money, you can make this much back, and this is the payment structure. This is our waterfall, is a lovely word we like to use, the payment waterfall for the investors. So this is going to be like, these people get paid first, this amount, then these people, and then it's going to trickle down. And so these are the words you want to start to learn. And to protect yourself, you're going to just tell people, hey, I'm raising capital for my movie. This is a friendly term because this can mean donations. This can mean cash gifts. This can mean in-kind things. This can mean sweat equity. This means a lot of things. I'm raising capital for this project. You can say this all the way through the end. And it protects you until you get this term sheet, this private placement memorandum. Everything's looked over by a lawyer. You have everything crossed off. And they say, yeah, go for it. Then you can say to people, hey, I'm raising investments. This is how much a share or a unit costs. This is equitable to this much profit on this type of payment structure. Like, this is what you have to be able to say. You can't just be winging it like, no, you can have 2%. That's fraud. You immediately.
So, because there's no guarantee at all.
Yeah. It's 2% of what? Like, what are those unit structures? What's the payment? What is the quarterly reports going to be? Like, are you doing this on LLC or is this S corp or is it like what is the? So there are so many questions. It's literally 6 months of work before you can say the word investment. So that's why I tell everybody, just do crowdfunding at first. Just do crowdfunding, and to make your crowdfunding even sweeter, get a fiscal sponsor. Do you know what a fiscal sponsor is?
I'm sort of familiar with it, yeah. So
fiscal sponsor, basically, they're a nonprofit who their niche or their focus is your demographic. Say filmmaking, you'd find a fiscal sponsor who focuses on filmmaking. And what they're going to say is, hey, you're doing crowdfunding, you're raising investment, whatever. Every dollar you get is going to come to us first as a donation. And then we're going to give you most of it back. And now all that money is now what's called tax advantaged, and it can be used, to help the donor relieve some of their tax stress. So this is one of the most useful, like if you do this, you're helping to raise money for charity. You're helping the person who's donating money reduce their taxes by donating to charity, and you help raise money for yourself. I love this. I think it's a great strategy, and I think it really helps like early filmmakers just really leverage themselves stronger to a like highly saturated audience who's hearing from everyone's uncle, brother, and cousin, sister, friend, relative. Hey, I'm making a movie. Can I have $10? Now yours is like, hey, mine's kind of like tax advantaged. And like
Yeah,
that's nice.
yeah. I mean, especially now with the way that the economy is, people are going to be a bit more hesitant about even parting with $5. So that
Yeah.
definitely is a pretty good resource right there.
And I'm not a big fan of doing the crowdfunding where it's like, hey, if you give me $25, we'll make this for you. I'm more of a fan of like, hey, give us money. You're promoting this film. Here's our pitch deck. It's tax advantaged. If you want to buy some of our merchandise, you can do that to support the film as well. Because really, all of it is about building this bridge with the audience and this relationship with your fan base to be like, I like you. You obviously all like me and the art that I make and the work that I make. Can you please support me in these ways? This is what I have to offer. And it's about what we call the offering. What are you bringing to the market? If your movie's not at the market yet, you need to bring out your basket or your hat and ask for donations and very bow your head and be polite.
Mhm.
Um, if you have clothes or stickers or books or comics or whatever you can, produce yourself, sell it, and use that to fund the film. And like, this is sort of the strategy I think a lot of people ignore is that fundraising and crowdfunding is a very multifaceted like entity and project or whatever. It takes a lot of people and a lot of minds working to a similar goal. And it takes like a sales mentality because your art is very, very important to you, the director, the writer, and possibly a few others. But you have to make some type of offering to your audience that gets them to agree that what you're making is worth it. And money is sort of what we've all agreed upon as a society, is that that's what it is. So you need to dangle it. You need to put it out a little bit and get a reaction. And I think this initial feedback is very important because if people respond positively, and they're like, hey, I will donate to your project. Hey, I will buy a shirt or something. Now hey, there's interest. Let's push this further.
Right, right. I mean, I mean, from the conversations that I've had previously, and from this one right now, it seems like probably the most arduous and longest process of making a movie isn't pre-production, production and post-production. It's the fundraising aspect.
Oh yeah. What I lovingly call research and development. So this is
R&D.
I learned this overseas, no joke. I was trying to raise money for a feature film that was going to cost me $25 million. And I've personally done that before, but not successfully. I had a deal for about 4 million at one point. I know how to get up to that level, but I haven't closed 4 million before. So I was going out to, we were going to Malaysia and then India. So we were in India at the time, and they brought me into a room. And this is when I realized I needed to start flying my lawyers with me because I'm in this room in India and they're all staring at me and I'm just in a seat alone. Like research and development was literally like I was taken out of that meeting and someone taught me that I had misspoken and basically said you should have said you were in research and development, blah blah blah. And I met another director. This was great. I met another director in that same trip in India. He took me to like a pool and we sat poolside and we talked about my project. And he really helped me kind of figure out how I should approach people. But that was one of the comments is they were like, don't tell people you're in pre-production or don't tell them you're raising money. This is awful. You say you're in research and development, which allows you to then discuss the script, discuss like what level of capital you have or you're seeking. It opens up so many more avenues of conversation.
It makes them more receptive as
There
opposed
it
to,
is. Yeah.
as opposed to saying, hey, this is an investment. You say the I word and all of a sudden they shut down.
They're gone. They're gone. They're gone. They're out the door. They're asking you to leave. And that was a mistake, And I wasn't even looking for 25 million. I think at that point we were doing the proof of concept. So we wanted like 25,000. I
Right.
didn't get it. It's not from them. I eventually got it later on, but that was a moment for me to realize, have people on your team with you so that you have a group if they're grouped up against you. And this is going to happen anywhere in the world you go. And research and development is the safest place to be with a project, because this also allows you to talk demographics, which is how they make money. This really falls under that category of like when you're selling a mattress, you don't say, oh, this is a really comfy mattress. You say this mattress is going to give you really good sleep. This is going to increase your sleep by 30%.
Oh, so sort of like selling the pen technique.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
you're leading in with these people. You go, the demographics on this movie are incredible. It appeals to this because that means you're saying these wallets. And if they're appealing to those wallets, oh, this fits our demographics. This aligns with our metrics. Maybe we do want to throw cash at this.
So
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this. So I get from your from your position, you're working to you're working to pitch this idea. You're working to see what the demographics are like. You're basically working as a salesman as a marketing specialist. From from a production standpoint, from the writer standpoint, is there a sort of what's the best way I can phrase it? Is there like an onus or sort of critique on their part to kind of readjust the script so it can match what they're expecting or what they're looking for? Because obviously, when you write the script, you have this idea in mind of what you want the story to be, but obviously you're not thinking from a business standpoint. And then when you actually go into the real world and you do research and development, things may not exactly align as you would hope. Do you ever have to go back to a writer and say, hey, maybe if you tweak things a bit here or there, maybe you'll get more response that way? Has that ever happened?
If I said every single project forever from beginning of time to the end of time, would that make the most sense to you? Because writers want their idea exactly as it can, and you have to look them in the eyes and say, hey, that's great, but it's not working. That's a tough moment. And
Right.
as a writer myself, I'm often a co-writer on every project I do, because I do want to make sure that the voice is as strong as it can be narratively. I want to make sure there's an emotional impact, and I'm in the room, because my writing tables often have at least 3 people, if not 5. When I used to do a lot of comedy writing, it'd be like 8, but that's like the most you can do, I swear. It gets a lot after that. But like, it's a lot of going back and forth with people and talking to them and saying, this is great, I don't know about that. And when it comes to money, I studied Musashi Miyamoto, and it's the book of 5 Rings. And he talks about this idea of slashing and cutting and how important it is to know the difference. And slashing is like when you're kind of like wiggling your sword or wiggling a decision. You're not being final. You're slashing at it. And this is what happens when like there's maybe disagreements on set and no one's giving an answer. Thing is when you think about it, you don't hesitate, but you do analyze and then you cut. And I think you have to be able to do that. You have to, when it comes to money, marketing, and like getting the film the furthest it can go, you must be conscientious of a like, 4th and 5th dimension. Because 4th dimension, if we're honest, is like, what do our thoughts do to the reality around us? In your films, especially as writers, we can insert things that are beautiful, but when they get to the camera or even to the edit, it's like, ooh, that's having an effect on the film that's creating a 4th dimension alter that I don't like. And that's real. And it's like, it's sometimes hard to really explain that unless you want to break it down esoterically. But thoughts and words have power. And as like wordsmiths, we are crafting magic things. And it can happen accidentally. And I think you have to be so prepared to just cut it, get rid of it, and look the writer, give them a big hug, and say, "I'm sorry, move on," because that's the agreement. The writer agrees to write from their soul, and the director, producer, and everyone else is interpreting this to make sure it's the most effective form it can be to reach the most audience it can. And I know this is really painful because I've had my own work destroyed before, but it's a part of the process.
Right.
And with the advent of AI, it's going to be more a part of the process because you're going to have a lot more writers who are not going to use the technology, and they're just going to want to really isolate themselves and pump out isolated pieces of work. And it's going to come to market, and people are either going to be like, I love this because it's so not AI integrated. You can tell, like, the moment you read an AI script, and like if the moment someone speaks AI copy, like it's not there yet. So I think in the next couple of years, you're gonna hear and see a lot of scripts from these like hermetic artists who are just gonna be pouring their soul out. And this is, how the pendulum will swing, and then we'll move back towards very like constructed Marvel things, and then it'll swing back towards very like art house Eurofilm. And I think that's just the human condition, man. And it needs to be this conversation, because if we're left to our own devices, we will say and do things which can inadvertently alter the future of humanity. And that's a real danger. And so you need to be open to critique and having people edit your work and respond to you and say, I think this is beautiful, but it's just not this film. That's my favorite way to say it to a writer. This is beautiful. This is poetry. This is the greatest film you ever read. It's just not this film. Like, that's the way to kind of like tiptoe your way out of it.
Right. Without saying, hey, you wrote a piece of shit here. All right, rewrite it.
Because I would never say that, because in our films, that there's a culture on like my cruise, and everyone on my cruise know this, and we're running multiple ships at this time. We have multiple directors, multiple producers. We don't ever come down on people unless they're getting fired. If you're not getting fired, we're going to be like, hey, whoa, chill. All right, well, what's going on? This is a mistake. Can we fix this? How do we fix this? This seems like a puzzle. How do we make this better? Like, if you're not getting fired, we're going to figure it out with you. And writers are a part of that. It'll be like, hey, I love everything else you've given me. This part isn't working for me. It's not this film. Can we try this? And that usually gets the response I need. And I'm also one of the people who is editing. So I'm very quick to just type my own version and be like, hey, you're on Blue Draft 3. Here's Purple Draft 7. I've been working.
Purple draft? What are you talking about? We're on blue. I can imagine a writer sort of like, holding his head in his hands and banging his head against the wall, being like, there was only supposed to be one draft. Why do you have two?
When you get to the point, it's like, oh man, 5 writers and everyone's got their own drafts going, and maybe there's come to be a disagreement. That's usually when your head writer steps in and there's like an alpha draft again, where it's like, we're restructuring from this one. Nobody rewrite anything without permission for a while.
That's how you split into the multiverse right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Different variants. So I want to shift gears a little bit, because honestly, we could talk about this for hours and hours. But I want to shift gears and just talk about any current projects that you're working on or have completed work on recently.
Oh, absolutely. We're so stoked and excited for Cargo Van, which is a one-shot feature film. And this is coming out, we're anticipating next month. So we have some like early festival decision stuff that we're probably going to do, and we're going to run festival for a year, but then we're going to take it to market. We have a really good opportunity to sell the film. It's 40 minutes long, one take. Really cool experience. I'm super excited to talk about it. I don't want to give too much away, but it is an authentic one take. We rehearsed. Well, basically, we worked on the script for 2 years. We rehearsed with the actors for 6 months, The actors did fight training in a dojo for 2 months. Yeah, two
Oh
months.
wow.
Then,
Is that intense? Wow.
yeah. And then we did a 4-day on-set location rehearsal, with the final day being, our film day. So we basically built out for 1 day, rehearsed for 2, and then shot on the 4th day. And we got it on the 3rd take.
Wow.
It's
See,
it's a rush. It's rock and roll filmmaking. It's not. It's gonna shock you. It's meant to. There is definitely like a left turn. It's fun.
so is it sort of along the veins of a Guy Ritchie film, like
So I love Guy Ritchie. Oh my god, I love Guy Ritchie. I'm so glad you brought him up. I hope he
Be-
hears
be-
about
be- be-
Guy.
because
You're one of the
because when
best.
you say cargo van, I immediately thought that sounds like something Guy Ritchie would
Oh,
make.
God, I love Guy. And maybe I was inspired. I'll be frank. I didn't. I'll tell you the inspiration in a second. I was not completely inspired by Guy Ritchie, but if I'm being honest, I've watched a lot of his films. I love Snatch. Snatch is one of my favorite films. I really hope he hears this. But I I was in a cargo van, and I was a PA, a production assistant,
Yeah.
and a PA turned to me, another one, and said, "There's no good movies about PAs." And this happened. This happened for years. Like every time I'd be with somebody, it would come up. And like, "You're a writer. You should write something." Or somebody else. It'd just be something to come up all the time. So I eventually was like, "How do I make this interesting? How do I make this film an interesting film? How would I do this?" And I eventually came up with what would be the script for Cargo Van. And Cargo Van did go under a couple of like iterations and changes. It was originally a guy and a girl, and then we changed it to 2 girls. So it's 2 female PAs on their last day of a job, and they have to deliver a very old bottle of wine that used to belong to Thomas Jefferson. So
Oh
this
my
bottle,
god.
it's in New York, and it's worth, I think, like 750 on market, 150 if just like bought normal, like 150,000. You know what I mean? But they have to deliver it to set for the last day of set. That's kind of the framework of the film. But on top of it, the lead, Edie, she kind of has a crush on Paulina. So we set the film up to become this like rom-com. But that's not exactly what happens. So
Right.
I had been playing a ton of Cyberpunk 2077, ton of it. I
I
really
was I,
love
I,
TV,
I was gonna say I was getting cyberpunk vibes also.
right?
Guy Ritchie and cyberpunk vibes.
Yeah,
I'm like,
so like CD Projekt Rec, they showed me that you can have a camera go into a vehicle, sit with them, and then get out, and you're kind of comfortable. They gave me the courage to be like, I don't think audiences are going to hate this as much as everybody thinks. So we got in the van, out the van, around the van. There's a fight, there's a chase, there's it's a lot. But I was really given the confidence from playing Cyberpunk to be like, I don't think audiences will mind a conversation in a car as long as it's moving and interesting, and you get out of the car.
right.
So that's where like a lot of this film was born. And so our first AC, he actually wore the samurai hoodie on set the day we were filming because he knew. He knew. The DP, huge anime head, Kayla Windsor, she's incredible, and she knew exactly what we're doing. So things are going in and out of windows, doors were like hidden open so we could pass stuff out. It was a lot of fun.
So yeah, I know you don't want to give too much away, but can you give us like a general idea of because I know you said that they're delivering a very expensive bottle of
I
wine.
can give you a little bit. So
Yeah, yeah.
the movie starts out, and you'll see it. It'll come out, and we hope everybody will either go to festival to see it, because that's going to be our only opportunity to see it for free is in festival, because we have it set up for market afterwards. So it'll be on Roku, Google. It'll be Gumroad. You can buy from me. But the movie starts out, and you're just kind of on the pier with Edie, our protagonist. And she takes you on a phone call to the van, and then she goes and picks up Paulina. So you kind of meet Edie, you go meet Paulina, and then they talk about, the wine. They get you set up. And this is all like a couple minutes into the film, it's fast.
Right.
And they set you up with its expensive bottle of wine. And Edie, when Paulina's not there, sets the audience up for hey, I kind of got a crush on this girl. I'm going to ask her out. Today's my last chance. So the movie's going to take you on this little like trip. And then they get a call from their boss, Marjorie, who they hate. And this is based on apparently a real person. And I apologize. I don't know the last name, but I guess one of our writers really hated this woman named Marjorie, who was like the producer when she was a production assistant. So they made this character who they just shit talked the whole film. And the producer messed up and they scheduled them wrong. So they have to waste time. That's sort of what sets up the film, is that they can't just go to set. They have to like go get coffee and talk and hang out for a little while. So Edie keeps trying to make her move and Paulina's kind of like pushing her off. And right before Edie can make her move, 3 people attack the van.
So are they just like random thugs, or?
I'm not going to tell you anything more. That's why I'm going to leave you, okay?
Okay.
It's one shot, one take. The whole thing is we want you to feel like this was happening to you.
Wow.
So we wanted you to feel like you were falling in love. We wanted you to feel like you had the butterflies. We wanted you to feel like you were going for the opportunity. And we wanted you to feel like you were being attacked.
So I guess one other question I would ask is, are we watching this from Edie's POV or?
Oh no, the ghost of Thomas Jefferson. So what we imagined is that the camera is kind of floating, and it became really like entertaining to us. Is like, what if the point of view is Thomas Jefferson's ghost or whatever that's connected to this bottle of wine, and you're just, watching all of this happen detached.
Wow.
So you're almost emotionally detached, but you do kind of like focus in on characters a little bit because things become interesting to you as like you're engaging what's happening in front of you, but you don't like intervene,
Yeah, because you can't really.
Yeah, you can't. You're ethereal. So that's the intended effect, is that you're this like floating bystander.
And I'm assuming the ghost is played by Jason Statham.
Yes, we did get Jason. I just had to tell him I was a Guy Ritchie fan. That was enough.
Jason, you have to wear this wig. I'm sorry, but it's part of the deal.
You're not even on camera. You just have to.
He did this. He did this while he was on break from the Expendables 4.
The dude needed something art housey, just the coolest jets. He was in Brooklyn.
So JT, I do want to go ahead and wrap up this episode, but like I said, I could talk to you for hours and hours on end, and I do plan on having you back for future episodes, especially once Cargo Van drops, because you've got me interested now. I definitely do want to see it.
Amazing! Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Absolutely, and well, on my part, I'm just glad to have you come on the show and have this discussion with me. But to wrap things up, are there any movies or TV shows that you're watching or you've seen recently that you just feel like, oh my God, I gotta tell people about this?
Something that I've watched recently that blew my mind. I have to be like frank. I've really retreated into comics.
Okay.
So there's been a fascinating thing that I picked up on, and it comes out of Lazarus Planet. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
No, I'm not. It's like a Dark Horse or Wildstorm or what?
This is Lazarus Planet, comes out of DC, and it's a world event that was semi-obscured, but it did happen. And it creates 3 brand new superheroes. City Boy, the group called the Vigil, and then Shantae, who is like a spirit walker in like Little China. She's a very interesting character. And these 3 stories, Spirit World, Vigil, and City Boy, have just blown my mind. Really, really like incredible stuff. Because you had mentioned earlier diversity, and these are 3 specifically like Asian American artists, Asian American stories. They're very authentic to being American experiences, but also with honor and reverence to the subject and culture that they're reflecting. They were specifically written and like illustrated by Asians who were a part of these communities. And I just think City Boy is the one that like blew me away because it's very like New York. It's very gritty. It's very I'm a city boy. It's just so good. He's so tough. Vigil blew my mind if you're into like espionage type stuff. And Spirit World just does a crazy crossover with Batgirl. And like DC, if you're into comics, you're into that world. These three on top of the Lazarus Planet, on top of Monkey Prince, I've just never been so blown away by DC property before.
Mm-hmm.
And with Marvel blowing them out of the water with movies and everything lately, they got James Gunn, who I'm a huge fan of. I think he's just one of the best. I'm interested if he picks this up. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this Fear State is great that they did recently. I think he might do Fear State, which I'm now trying to like figure out. Because I've just been so blown away by world event storytelling, because that's what I want to do. I remember even when I was in school as a child, they told me this. It's like the style you want to write is epic. It's like, yeah. I want to do like 12 books, I want like 100 movies. And I've never given up that dream. I've become very realistic lately. A one-shot feature film is honestly, a single moment. You can't do much smaller than that. But my dream has always been to make something that was like 20 comics long, like, Lost Ronin. Oh my God. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Lost Ronin. Cannot wait. They'll never make it unless you're okay with the Mutant Mayhem, which I will give a big shout out and thank you to IDW Publishing. Mm-hmm. They did give me a free ticket to go see Mutant Mayhem. They gave me a couple of the Street Fighter TMT comics. I appreciate them. That was very cool of them. I think Mutant Mayhem was an incredible movie. I actually cried in that film. I think the mixed medium of television, cinema, animation, comic on a widescreen projection like that was beautiful. I think the storytelling in Ninja Turtles, now that I'm a father, hits deeper because I relate more to Splinter, as ashamed as I am to say that. You just, you become this father now and you're like, oh, he just wants to take care of his babies. Oh my God. So Last Ronin is heartbreaking. If you don't know about Last Ronin, I'm not going to say anything, but you gotta get to it when you can, because that stuff's flying off the shelf. I went to a store today. They did not have any more Last Ronin comics. Like, it's gone.
Really?
Yeah. So this story is, you can get Lost Years, which is like the second telling. You can get the hardcovers in the trade, like whatever, but this is a story that if you're into Ninja Turtles, if you're into, emotional things, and you want to get your heart broken, like just criminally destroyed, if you just want to like cry alone, read Last Ronin and then just hang on for the game to come out.
Oh God, man! And here I am. I'm still on Hellboy. I've only gotten to volume 4.
Yo, you get ready.
I know they're gonna do another reboot of the Hellboy franchise. So I'm
down for it. I'm here for it.
Yep. Well, JT, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come onto my podcast. I know it's a bit hectic for you given your schedule and, as a film producer and as a father, but thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. And remember, if you like and enjoy all the episodes coming out, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Ciao.